Welcome to hour number 2, live right here on this Wednesday on the early line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. That is SportsGrid. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. A ton to get to here in hour number 2 with an intense football focus. One final look back on Conference Championship weekend in what it sets up for Super Bowl Sunday around the NFL. But Donnie, the big surprise yesterday on a Tuesday was what happened with Ben Johnson in Detroit. We all assumed he was going to be on his way to the nation's capital to become the next head coach of the Washington Commanders. A new evolution, a new era for that organization, looking for a big splash as a hire under the new ownership group led by Josh Harris. In fact, the news that we brought you at this time yesterday on a Tuesday morning was that officials from the Commanders organization were in the Motor City to interview Ben Johnson and probably bring him back to Landover, Maryland. Except that's not what happened. The report yesterday, Ben Johnson is staying put. He will remain as the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions entering 2024.
You know, outside of Jim Harbaugh, and maybe even over Jim Harbaugh, we were thought to believe that Ben Johnson was the single hottest head coaching candidate that we've seen over the past couple of years. Sort of had that Brian Daboll feel, right? Like as soon as he makes his decision to leave Buffalo, it's going to be carte blanche. Pick this spot in New York. It's a shame he hitched his wagon to Daniel Jones. But then again, we'll see what happens in the future with Daboll and the Giants. But let's get back over to Washington. This wasn't like Ben Johnson was going to go to the Carolina Panthers. Like, okay, no draft pick. You got some capital you can spend, but an owner that's really a maniac, and you might get fired in a year, because head coaching jobs, number one, are very hard to get, and number two, keep in touch with them, which means, hey, stay in a city for more than 5 years when that contract is up. As we welcome in the radio audience, you're watching and listening live to a Wednesday morning edition of the Early Line on the SportsGrid Network, Sirius XM Channel 159. I'm Donnie, he's Ben, as we're talking about Ben Johnson, your offensive coordinator, staying with the Detroit Lions. But you get that vibe of, okay, he can go to a franchise here that really was sold here at this point. No Snyder. You have looks like what things a bright front office with a big-time future, a high draft pick to get your quarterback, and unlimited the funds to spend, and he stays in Detroit. Now, I also had a couple minutes yesterday to think about what actually might have taken place, and I sort of credit Ben Johnson for this. If you work from like an introspective on yourself and say, you know what, I might only get one crack at this. I'm not well-rounded enough. And the reason I bring this up is we're not saying he's not a great offensive coordinator that could be a head coach, but being a head coach in the NFL is so much more, Ben, than locking yourself in a room and just studying film and showing up on game day and calling plays. You're the face of that organization. And if he felt he wasn't ready at that point, or the price point wasn't good enough, good on him for staying in Detroit by saying, I'm going to know when I'm ready to go and I'm comfortable to lead an organization. And he felt he wasn't ready to do that, which I commend him for that, Ben. I really do.
Only 37 years old is Ben Johnson at this moment. So a very bright future ahead. And obviously they have built something that everybody wants to be a part of in Detroit. There is that mentality in that organization of biting kneecaps, of staying together, of all grit. And we have seen it lead the Lions to historic highs we have not seen for this organization nearly ever in their history in the National Football League since the merger back in 1970, certainly not in the last 3 decades. They are on the brink of the first ever Super Bowl appearance in Detroit, and maybe Ben Johnson also wants to have a part in shaping that history continuously of this Lions franchise. That can be a part of it as well. But it seemed as though he was a lock. We'll get to why he might be staying in just a moment. But, Donnie, I was live on the radio with Scott Wetzel yesterday on Football Full Circle as we were looking at the Super Bowl 59 odds for next year, just having a conversation about what is next for the teams that were bounced from the postseason. And the Lions yesterday were 17-1. I start to see it move 15-1. I start to see it go to 12-1. Like, what is happening? Why are these odds, of all the odds that are available still with one final football game in 2023, changing for 2024? We hit the commercial break. I go to Twitter, and there it was from Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network that Ben Johnson was staying in Detroit. The Lions were retaining their offensive coordinator. Not often do you see a coach or a coordinator even move a team's Super Bowl price by $5, but that is the impact of the Lions holding on to Ben Johnson. 17-1 yesterday, alongside the Eagles, behind both the Niners and the Cowboys in the NFC, out of those NFC teams for the Super Bowl next season. Now 12-1, the Lions have the second best price to win Super Bowl 59, hailing from the NFC, only behind the team that came back to beat them this past Sunday in the NFC Championship game, the San Francisco 49ers. That, in display, is the Ben Johnson effect.
It is the Ben Johnson effect, which is fantastic to watch it play out because it feeds into the point that I was bringing up yesterday. In no way, shape, or form that I think most people thinking that Ben Johnson would end up staying here and being the offensive coordinator in Detroit as opposed to moving on, which is how big of an indication for Detroit that this team, yes, Dan Campbell is the head coach, but Ben Johnson is the engine of that football team. Sure, you can have Dan Campbell and the players like him and want to play from, that's fine. But as I coined the term yesterday, the thought process from the betting public on them dropping was, oh, look, Ben Johnson's leaving. Now we're going to be stuck with Coach Rockhead on the sideline, and we'll see how good a football team we can actually be when he's going for it on every fourth down, and we don't have a great offensive scheme anymore. So Ben Johnson saying keeps that stability in town, which means, again, Jared Goff's going to get a big contract, and he'll perform really well again next year because Ben Johnson is the one calling the plays. I was looking at the absolute disaster scenario saying, wait a second. Jared Goff is actually going to get $50 million. Ben Johnson is going to leave. The rest of the division is going to get better. This is a disaster scenario, which now is better. And also the joke I had yesterday, too, was, wait a second, Ben Johnson staying in Detroit. Are they going to have a press conference firing Dan Campbell just to make sure Ben Johnson stays as the head coach now? Let's take a look in the future. I won't get to see it play out next year because it would have been a lot of fun for me to keep that fire on Detroit next year, Ben. I'm not going to get that choice now.
Listen, the guy to my left used to be known as Detroit Donnie. Yesterday, he became Hater Donnie. He is now back to Detroit Don, getting ready for 2024. And I love this. In the NFL insider battle, when somebody gets scooped, you got to provide a little context to breaking news. And that's what ESPN's Adam Schefter did yesterday as to why Ben Johnson, who seemed like a surefire head coach in 2024, is staying in the Motor City, and did include this, that some people maybe were spooked off by his asking price, which would be a very bold move for somebody who has no head coaching experience to have an asking price for an organization like Washington to not be able to ante up.
Yeah, let me just keep it quick on this. So he's worried he wasn't going to get paid enough, but let's just say Washington gave him $10 million a year. He doesn't want that, but he wants $3 million a year to be a coordinator of Detroit. That's such a bogus report, man. I don't know who planted that story.
Yeah. Listen, Shefty wanted to make his name in the big breaking news of yesterday. More around the coaching carousel in the NFL next.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but he's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I can tell you, like, Las Vegas is heavy San Francisco territory. All right, there are a ton of Niner fans, man, in Las Vegas and in Nevada, and specifically Reno. Reno's close, obviously, right? So, like, Reno's numbers will be a little bit different, but the total of 47.5. I get it.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
I kind of thought that Mike would maybe go in a different direction, or at least listen to some people with some different ideas.
If you were going to retain Mike Tomlin as coach, and I believe with both feet that you shouldn't let him really anywhere near this hire. That he had proved over the years that this was not an area of comfort or expertise for him.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the RAC. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like OKC just rolling into Detroit going, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The NFL coaching carousel always provides context and conversations, and it was spinning yesterday. Ben Johnson will remain the offensive coordinator in Detroit. That was rather shocking. There's a new OC in the Steel City, and his name is Arthur Smith, who spent the past 3 years as the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. He will be the offensive coordinator for Pittsburgh entering 2024, a Steelers organization that we know very well. 17 years under Mike Tomlin, never a losing season, never less than 8 wins, 11 playoff appearances, but they have really failed to reach the highest level of the sport since 2010. And although they are consistently successful, the offense has been an issue the past half decade or so in the Steel City, certainly in the 2 years under Kenny Pickett or Mitchell Trubisky or even Mason Rudolph at the quarterback position for Pittsburgh. Arthur Smith is now the new offensive coordinator in the Steel City. What did you make of the decision for Pittsburgh to hire Smith?
It's kind of funny here. We always talk about, and quite frankly, on X and Twitter, you see it a lot, the Spider-Man meme where he's pointing at each other like, you, no, the same guy here. The reason I bring that up and I think it's funny is Arthur Smith cut his teeth in Tennessee before he went to Atlanta, and it didn't work out for him. But let's go back to the Tennessee offense. Like, Mike Tomlin is looking at it like, that's exactly the offense I want. Slow it down. Don't make mistakes. Hand the football off to your running back. Don't have a great vertical passing game, and we'll win on defense, and I'll at least get my 9 to 10 wins next year. Because heaven forbid here, Ben, the Pittsburgh Steelers go outside the building and have a guy like, let's just say, Eric Bieniemy come in and go, you know what? It's time to get into the 21st century here. We're going to be running shotgun. I want a quarterback that's mobile. I want a quarterback with an absolute cannon. And I want 3 capable wide receivers, and we'll mix in the tight end. And if we need the running game, we'll obviously have that as well. That's just not the Steelers' MO. The safe choice was Arthur Smith, who's going to come in and not rock the boat. He's not as bad as Matt Canada. I don't think anybody could be as bad as Matt Canada, but make no mistake about it. When you go into your offensive meetings and Mike Tomlin strolls in and looks at that play sheet, looks like you got too many wide receivers out here. I'll check back later when you adjust that here. That's what it is like being an offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I would have, tell me this, Ben. Cliff Kingsbury to Pittsburgh. I'd be like, this is awesome. I can't wait to watch what the Steelers have, even if it ends up in burning flames next year. You owe it to that football team to shake it up. But from the Mike Tomlin tree, wins are the most important thing, and winning each and every game, not worrying about what the final score is. That's how you get a winning record and not much playoff success over the past decade.
Listen, consistent success, consistent winning seasons, that is something to fall back on. It is a staple of consistency for Pittsburgh, but they have only played in the Super Bowl once since they last won it in 2008, and that was 2 years later in 2010. They have only reached the AFC Championship game one time in the last nearly decade and a half in the NFL. That was 2016. There has not been a ton of playoff success, despite playoff berths, for a team that is always hovering around, of course, the playoff conversation. And I think there was an opportunity to try to buck that trend, to do something new, to evolve into the future in the NFL. What is the future for Kenny Pickett at the quarterback position for Pittsburgh? That will ultimately be for Arthur Smith to figure out. In the last 3 years in Atlanta, we can look back on this season. They were the 7th worst scoring offense in the National Football League, less than 19 points per game. Arthur Smith never figured out the quarterback position, and that was his charge as the head coach the past 3 seasons. 7-10 was the record for the Atlanta Falcons each of the last 3 NFL years. Now, they were one of the most efficient rushing offenses 2 years ago in 2022. We expected that to carry over at bare minimum into 2023 with the addition of Bijan Robinson. That wasn't necessarily the case. But before Arthur Smith became the head coach in Atlanta, 2 years as the OC in Nashville with the Tennessee Titans, and they were a top 3 rushing offense both of those years. Was that because of the creative offensive scheme of Arthur Smith? Maybe. Or was it because of having a guy known as the King, Derrick Henry, who is a physical freak at 6'3" and nearly 250 pounds? They ranked bottom 10 in passing offense under Ryan Tannehill. They never really did evolve on that cutting edge of creativity offensively, and that seems to be a comfortable position for Mike Tomlin and Pittsburgh to be in moving forward.
Yeah, and again, that's the crux of the argument here. What are we getting out of Pittsburgh? You're going to get a competent team here. Like Arthur Smith, as much as he's maligned in Atlanta, he is a capable football coach. But I think that's exactly what the Pittsburgh Steelers wanted. Just bring me capable, bring me the concepts we like. He's shown the propensity, as again, that Spider-Man meme, like, hey, that's the offense I want over here. Well, it doesn't really win. So what? I want that offense over here. Bring it to town. I just would have loved for them to go outside of the building. But by the way, this is an upgrade from what they had in the room last year. So if you're a Steelers fan, I guess you can hang your hat on that. But that is a tough as nails division that you're going to expect to win these games by scoring 21 points or less. I would have loved to have seen him say, you know what, Kenny Pickett, this is your year to shine. I'm going to give you an offense that's going to put you in the driver's seat. You sink or swim. You let us know if you can be our franchise guy. And now we're going back to a game managing type situation, it feels like, for Kenny Pickett, which is the exact wrong scenario for me, Ben.
Listen, the AFC is always going to be a gauntlet. It is going to be the gauntlet for the next half decade. You have Mahomes, you have Lamar Jackson, you have Josh Allen, you have Joe Burrow, all of these guys under the age of 30, most under the age of 28 or 29 at this moment. But you would expect for a Steelers team that made the playoffs and once again finished with a winning record to have at least a 50-1 number to win Super Bowl 59. Nope. Fourth longest out of teams from the AFC at 100-1 alongside the Denver Broncos. So tied for the third longest, technically. Only the Patriots and the Titans at 150-1 have a longer price and a steeper hill to climb than that of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Arthur Smith, the new OC in Pittsburgh, the former head coach in Atlanta, he was fired at the end of 2023. 8 head coaching vacancies following the end of the regular season. 6 have been filled. Raheem Morris is back with the Falcons. Frank Reich was fired in the middle of the year. Dave Canales, the new offensive coordinator, or the offensive coordinator from Tampa Bay this past season, the new head coach in Charlotte. The biggest splash was Jim Harbaugh becoming the new head coach of the Chargers. The Titans hire Brian Callahan, the former offensive coordinator in Cincinnati. Antonio Pierce, who was the interim head man following Josh McDaniels' dismissal before Halloween, is now the permanent head coach in Las Vegas. And, of course, the Patriots moved quickly. The succession plan following Bill Belichick. Gerard Mayo, the new head coach in Foxborough. Which one stands out to you the most?
Number one is Jim Harbaugh. Like, that's the one you can sell to your fan base. They're excited right away, and we expect expectations right off the bat. Let me just go back to my Philadelphia Eagles fandom for a second here, Ben. Doug Peterson was named head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles some years ago, right? Looked at that as like the 5th, 6th, 7th choice here. Nobody was excited about Doug Peterson coming to town. They won a Super Bowl. Then they hired Nick Sirianni. Nobody was excited about Nick Sirianni coming to Philadelphia, but he has had some success. So the moral of the story is, I don't like a lot of these names, but they still can work out in the favor and have success in their cities. But I got to be honest. If you are some of these football teams, like Raheem Morris in Atlanta, Dave Canales for the Carolina Panthers, you are seeing one of the single best crops of head coaches coming up this year that you could choose to get the excitement back in your franchise. And a lot of these teams came away with a Brian Callahan as their coach. And again, I'm not saying it can't work out, because quite frankly, it did in Philadelphia. But if you wanted to invigorate your fan base and get ready for 2024, I think some of these have the real chance to be unbelievable swing and misses. And then they sit back and go, we had the best coach in the history of the NFL out there who wanted a job, and we went with Dave Canales. Like, that's what I'm looking at this point now. It's unfathomable. It might work out, as I said, Ben, but quite frankly, a lot of these teams really are putting themselves behind the 8 ball right now.
2 head coaching vacancies still to fill. That would be Seattle and Washington. Big names still out there. Mike McDonald, the Ravens defensive coordinator, Mike Vrabel, and of course, one of the greatest of all time, Bill Belichick, still looking for employment. More football is our focus next.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I can tell you, like, Las Vegas is heavy San Francisco territory. All right, there are a ton of Niner fans, man, in Las Vegas and in Nevada, and specifically Reno. Reno's close, obviously, right? So, like, Reno's numbers will be a little bit different, but the total of 47.5. I get it.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
I kind of thought that Mike would maybe go in a different direction, or at least listen to some people with some different ideas.
If you were going to retain Mike Tomlin as coach, and I believe with both feet that you shouldn't let him really anywhere near this hire. That he had proved over the years that this was not an area of comfort or expertise for him.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the RAC. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you could talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like OKC just rolling into Detroit going, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
It is a football focus in this second hour of a Wednesday live on the early line on SportsGrid. I am Ben Stevens. Donnie right side is on the right, and the man in the middle is Mark Zinno, here to take one final look at Conference Championship weekend around the National Football League with one just final football game left in 2023. That would be Super Bowl Sunday between the Chiefs and the Niners. Zinno, as always, we appreciate the time. Thank you for joining us here on this Wednesday.
Ben, Donnie, great to be with you guys as always. Looking forward to a Taylor Swift-filled Super Bowl.
He sounds like it, as he was a big backer of the Baltimore Ravens. But yet, the Kansas City Chiefs and those Swifties march on to Las Vegas. We go back to the NFC Championship game and look at a historic comeback for the San Francisco 49ers in historic disappointment for the Detroit Lions. 34-31 the final in Santa Clara on Sunday night. It was a 17-point lead for Detroit at the halftime break. Thus, the largest ever halftime deficit overcome in a conference championship game in National Football League playoff history. Zinno, if you could sum up what we saw in Santa Clara on Sunday night in one word, what word, family friendly, would you use?
Stupidity. Look, balls over brains is not a good coaching philosophy, right? Like, that's not a philosophy you want to go into an NFL game with, is that I'm just going to do whatever, machismo tells me to do and not actually just manage the game in front of you. I mean, at some point in time, it just boils down to simple math. When whatever play you're deciding, if you're in a lead, if it takes it from a 2-score game to a 3-score game, make it a 3-score game. If you're trailing, if it takes it down from a 3-score game to a 2-score game, that's what you do. Like, you don't have to overcomplicate this stuff, because it's generally just about opportunities and chances to score that you'll have the football, which we know is a finite number of amount in any given NFL game. And while there's arguments for game script, game flow, and what's in your gut feeling and all the other stuff, I think those things are fair. At the end of the day, poor coaching is what lost the Lions the NFC Championship game. And in reality, Ben, and I know when we'll get to the AFC Championship game, we'll say the same thing, but what I took away from Championship weekend was simply that you cannot handicap stupid coaching. There literally is no way to go into a game to handicap to know when a coach is going to do something so asinine and maniacal that there is no explanation for it. See Sean McVay against the Lions. See Dan Campbell against the 49ers. Like, see Todd Monken and the entire offensive philosophy against the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, there is no way to handicap stupid coaching.
We see it quite a bit, too, Mark, in some of the biggest games. And you can even go back to some Bill Belichick moments where he refused to call a timeout when the Seattle Seahawks were going to run the clock down, should have handed off to Marshawn Lynch and gave no time left on the clock for the Patriots. That turned out to be an interception. But I hear where you're coming from here. But if we take a look at that game on Sunday, it's almost like have your convictions to be dumb and wrong all the time, and we can live with that. Because the questions that came up for me, Mark, were at the end of the first half, if you want to be all machismo, we always go for it, and we put the dagger in football teams, why do you kick the field goal at the end of the first half to make it a 3-score game? Which I completely actually agreed with at that point. Keep the momentum and keep going. Then in the second half, it's a 14-point game where they just scored, and you're saying, you know what? I want to put the pressure back, because I think what you're alluding to is the same as me. Some things you can get away in the regular season against the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Carolina Panthers. But we all know in the game's biggest moments, if you continue to apply the pressure by tacking on points and keeping it over a 2 to 3 score minimum, that weighs on the 49ers. Because from my point of view here is, okay, he goes for it and they didn't get it. But if you don't get that and you kick the field goal, that crowd is still dead in that environment there. That football team, the 49ers, goes, man, it's still a 3-score game at this point. The minute that was an incomplete pass, the entire stadium and the 49ers woke up. I still can't believe that he went for it in those instances when if you just kick the field goal in all of those ones, I think Detroit, Mark, is in the Super Bowl.
I mean, it certainly is a good argument for it. And not only is it about going for it, it's about the execution and the play call that you put in that situation. I mean, the problem here, and as if you bring that graphic up again, the problem here is that a lot of coaches, when they want to go for it on 4th down, you know what they don't do? They don't play 3rd down like you're going for it on 4th down. They make the decision to go for it on 4th down after the 3rd down play is completed, and that's not the way it's done, right? And again, that was Sean McVay's problem against the Rams. I know Ben is going to clap back at me, but Sean McVay's problem against the Lions, rather, like when you want to be aggressive, then you can't just decide to do it on fourth down. You have to play the entire series with the mantra that every 4 downs is a 4-down situation, right? Like, you understand what I'm saying? Like, you can't just all of a sudden on a whim say, well, I'm going to go for it on fourth. No, if you're going to go for it on fourth, then your play on third down should feed into what you're going to do on fourth down. Otherwise, kick the damn field goal. Coaching it's just impossible what we've seen, how many coaches get out over their skis on this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely so. Listen, I agree, by the way, that you could make the argument that Dan Campbell's coaching decisions were the wrong one. I do not ultimately believe they were the most costly mistakes made in the second half of the NFC Championship game that kept the Lions from their first ever berth in a Super Bowl. In fact, I actually thought the first fourth down play call was a good one, and Josh Reynolds was wide open, and he had bricks on his hands, and it fell to the turf. I also do just want to say, for Donnie's point about the first half context before the break versus the second half context, it was a 21-yard field goal attempt for Michael Badgley. Donnie could have made that kick. Zinno certainly would have made that kick. I probably would have missed wide right. But Michael Badgley's career percentage from 48 yards or greater is 45%. So I think there is a belief and confidence that Dan Campbell has in his team, the balls over brains mentality to always go for it in pro territory when it is 4th and 5 or less. I also think there was a lack of confidence in a kicker who had been with the team for just 6 games this year and had 2 field goal attempts from 40 yards or greater. That context also important as we make these arguments. Anything else on the NFC Championship game, gentlemen, before we move our focus to the AFC title game in Baltimore, where I really want to hear from Zinno? Yes, Donnie, please.
Yeah,
One
quick note on that. Yeah, just so everybody sees it. But just one quick point of view on that field goal kicker. Number one, what is your general manager doing, giving you a field goal kicker, knowing you're trying to make a Super Bowl run that you don't trust for over 45 yards? Number two here, Ben, I would completely agree with you. If this game was in Buffalo, look at Tyler Bass miss because it was crazy windy conditions. It was 70 degrees, 2-mile-an-hour winds, and no precipitation. And you're coming into that football game going, I don't think my kicker can make a 45-yarder. I mean, what were the Detroit Lions doing? I just wanted to throw that because I get your point is very valid. But in that scenario, if you don't have a kicker that can kick in that environment, that's a flaw in your entire organization.
And I'll add one thing here real quick, gentlemen, in reference to the NFC Championship game. Let's put our hats off to Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers for putting it all together. Look, I think I saw the stat during the game. Kyle Shanahan trailing by 17 points, never came back and won a game in his entire coaching career.
True.
And, they put it all together. The other part of that is that San Francisco had to be flawless in their execution every time they touched the ball in the second half. And they were. And they absolutely, took the game out as much as the Lions put it on a platter for them to a certain extent. The 49ers took that and didn't drop it and, got it home. So I don't want to underscore that as we head into a game against a team that almost in these playoff situations will never make those mistakes that are going to give it to you. And you need to be equally as flawless and equally as perfect if you want to get over the top and win a Super Bowl.
So, Zinno, you started by saying you can't handicap bad coaching. You can certainly handicap a coaching advantage. And let's call a spade a spade. Kyle Shanahan maybe not deserving of that in the most significant stages entering Sunday's NFC Championship game, often in Shanahan's coaching career, either as an offensive coordinator in Atlanta or a head coach with San Francisco, has been on the other side of historic comebacks. I'm referencing, of course, the Super Bowl against New England, 28-3, Super Bowl 54, up 20-10, midway through the third quarter. A San Francisco team that had only played in one Super Bowl despite reaching the NFC Championship game in 3 of the past 4 years. All of that to say, Shanahan made the correct adjustments off. Niners scored on every single offensive possession, all 5 of them before, of course, icing out the clock at the end. So, Zinno, you were not pleased with the coaching decisions in Baltimore. Uncharacteristic day for the Ravens. 4 personal foul penalties, 3 turnovers, only 16 rush attempts for a Ravens offense, despite averaging over 5 yards per pop against a bottom half Kansas City defense defending the run in the National Football League. What was your main gripe, Mark Zinno, with the AFC Championship game on Sunday?
Lamar Jackson flat out refused to take off and run. I don't understand it. I mean, it was the first quarter. It was 4th and 1. The Ravens were down 7-0 on their own side of the 50, and they decided to go for it, which might have felt like a panic move to some that early in the game. What did they do? Oh, quarterback draw / sneak, and he ran 28 yards down the field for a first down, leading to the game-tying touchdown at that point, 7-7. I thought for a guy who had over 65.5 rushing yards, that was the one I needed right there to put me over the top because Lamar would do the rest at some point in the game. He just flat out refused to take off and run. For some reason in his head, he thought he was going to throw his team to an AFC championship, proving what point? Because at the end of the day, guess what? I don't care or remember what Brad Johnson's stats were in the Super Bowl. I don't care or remember what Trent Dilfer's stats were. I don't care or remember what Joe Flacco's stats were. You know what I all know? They freaking won. And that's all that should have mattered to Lamar, any size, way, shape, or form. For a guy who is trying to defeat this narrative about him in the playoffs, he did nothing but feed into it and give you more fodder for the fact that he chokes in the biggest moments with the game line.
A 2-4 playoff record now for Lamar Jackson in his career. A disappointing defeat in his only AFC Championship game appearance. So we'll focus from here on out on Super Bowl 58, 11 days away. Back on the early line now.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
Right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I don't
favorite.
care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I can tell you, like, Las Vegas is heavy San Francisco territory. All right, there are a ton of Niner fans, man, in Las Vegas and in Nevada, and specifically Reno. Reno's close, obviously, right? So, like, Reno's numbers will be a little bit different, but the total of 47.5. I get it.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
I kind of thought that Mike would maybe go in a different direction, or at least listen to some people with some different ideas.
If you were going to retain Mike Tomlin as coach, and I believe with both feet that you shouldn't let him really anywhere near this hire. That he had proved over the years that this was not an area of comfort or expertise for him.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the RAC. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like, OKC just rolling into Detroit, going, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts, so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas, a rematch of Super Bowl 54. Once again, it's the Chiefs and the 49ers, this time in Viva Las Vegas. 11 days out from Super Bowl Sunday, Mark Zinno is here for a second consecutive segment to help us take an early look at the lines and the leans here on the early line. So it's a 1.5 point spread, Zinno, in favor of the 49ers. We have seen some sense of movement in the money line prices the last 48 hours or so. Now, minus 132 for San Francisco, plus 112 for Kansas City. It was as close as an 8-cent difference, minus 112 San Francisco, minus 104 KC. Now it's the heftiest money line price, if you want to call it that, in the last 2 days, minus 132 in favor of the 49ers. Just how razor thin are the edges for Super Bowl 58?
I mean, the general philosophy across all the NFL playoffs is just pick the winner. Don't worry about the spread. And other than the Rams covering and not winning against the Lions, the Packers covering and not winning against the 49ers, and well, they got backdoored theoretically, even though it shouldn't have been that way anyway. But the Lions didn't win, but covered those 3 games. Every other playoff game, the winner covered the spread or was the outright winner. So I think that kind of holds here. I would tell you this much. Let's see. I bet against the Chiefs with the Bills. I bet against the Chiefs with the Ravens. Maybe I should just make it a trifecta and do it once again and bet against the Chiefs with the 49ers. But I don't know if I could stomach losing another bet to the Kansas City Chiefs, especially since I didn't hedge my Ravens Super Bowl future last week and double down on them. That said, yeah, this is going to be a very tight game. I'll tell you what, guys, the only real thing that jumped out to me was the total sitting at 47.5 when it opened, and it hasn't moved yet. I thought there might have been some early action to the over, just given what we saw from the 49ers. But really, this Chiefs team plays so many damn unders, and their offense is not very good when it comes to scoring points. Like, do we equate the Ravens defense and the Niners defense as pretty similar? I would. And they didn't score a single second-half point against the Ravens. They only scored 17 in the game. So I'm kind of surprised that we haven't seen the total move at all. I have a play here. I can't exactly 100% endorse it. But if you're playing pure numbers here, Ben, would it be the worst thing in the world for a 7-point teaser to take the Chiefs up to 8.5 and take the total from 47.5 to 40.5 and bet the over? Because 41 is a key total. Like, you get favorable numbers on both sides. I know people hate teasing totals. You're not supposed to do all those other things. But that's the one thing situationally from a numbers standpoint that jumped out to me. Chiefs to 8.5, total down to 40.5 and go over.
I hear the frustration coming through, Mark, and rightfully so, because I also had a Ravens future here. And look, you're going to win and lose some things, but sometimes, like, hey, you know what? If they lost 35-34, you can deal with it. The frustrating way the Ravens lost, where it's just if we could have been offensive coordinators, we think it could have changed. But hear me out on this. We're handicappers, and this is sometimes so hard to do, because you're right about it. Maybe the Miami Dolphins, they were supposed to get beat by the Kansas City Chiefs. Most people are saying, like, you know what? Buffalo's going to get the Kansas City Chiefs, and weren't able to do that. Well, the Ravens are going to take care of the Kansas City Chiefs. They were unable to do that. So after the game, you rant and rave. I come on Monday morning and go, is it just this simple? The 49ers from top to bottom are so much better than the Kansas City Chiefs, but they don't have Patrick Mahomes. And handicapping football games, we're not supposed to take a look at some previous biases that, Mahomes is good and he keeps winning. Each individual game, it's a separate entity. I really want to take the San Francisco 49ers, but I find myself laughing, going like, are you an idiot, Donnie? You're going to watch this Super Bowl. Like, I just bet against Mahomes again, and he beat me because he's the best quarterback on the field. Do you find yourself handicapping games based on that by saying to yourself, you know what? I know I'm not supposed to do this, but just bet Brady. Just bet Mahomes. It usually works out in your favor regardless of the handicap.
I mean, especially as underdogs, right? You look at Brady's record as an underdog. He covered 71% of the time throughout, especially in the playoffs. I think the number one up even higher. And it's the same thing with Mahomes. I mean, generally, look, if Mahomes is getting a field goal or close to it, the guy doesn't lose all that often. Maybe in the regular season, but certainly not in the postseason. I'm with you. There's nothing that Kansas City does better than the 49ers other than the quarterback position itself. Now, what we've learned is that for Patrick Mahomes, that's not really enough. Here's my biggest thing going into this game. Like, if the San Francisco 49ers allow Travis Kelce to catch more than 6 passes, shame on them. Then you deserve to lose. Because at this point in time, Travis Kelce got 11 targets in the game against the Ravens, caught all 11 damn balls. Like, that is derelict coaching at some point to not turn around and go, I don't care who else beats us. I don't care what no-name receiver they pulled off the street. I don't care what guy who has hands for feet, or feet for hands, rather, is running out there for him. If they catch the ball, they catch the ball. 87 is not going to beat us. And that's really what it boils down to, because when you take that dude away from Patrick Mahomes, that's the easiest way to make him small. That's the easiest way to make him pedestrian, is take 87 out of the game plan. And if the 49ers don't do that, they may as well not even show up for the game, because I don't give them much of a chance.
So the over-under right now is 47.5. It is the lowest total in Super Bowl history, dating back to Super Bowl 50. That was 8 years ago. The Panthers and the Broncos, that game stayed under with a total of 43. Let me just check that real quick to make sure I had the right teams. Yes, Panthers and the Broncos, total under 43. So, Zinno, as we look at 47.5, and it's a 1.5-point spread, it's a couple of cents of difference right now on the money line. I ask you this question. If the total goes over, who wins? If the total stays under, who does that benefit?
Well, again, I would argue that the over favors the Niners here. I mean, we think Chiefs, we think over, we think them scoring, but that's just not the case for the 2023 into the playoffs 2024 Chiefs. The Niners, if they are getting to 27, the Chiefs can't get there. They flat out can't. They don't want this game to stay under. You don't want to be in a one-score, low-scoring game with the Chiefs, because they will make plays when it matters, and their defense is good enough to shut down the pass. The Niners have to score. If the Niners are held to 24 or less, I don't know that they can win this game. I just don't think they will. So the over 100% favors the 49ers for a team that's so defensive-minded for all intents and purposes. You do not want to get into an under shootout with the Chiefs. They're better at it than most people. They're better conditioned. And like I said, with the game on the line, when you need one play, i.e., 3rd and 9, and Patrick Mahomes takes 3 steps back, falling backwards, chucks up a rainbow that somehow lands in the hands of the receiver. It's that kind of play that the Chiefs always seem to make, and Mahomes always seems to make with the game on the line, that you don't want to get involved with. Go blow this team out if you're the 49ers. Push the envelope as much as you can. And that Chiefs team cannot play catch-up. They're not equipped for it.
The best part about, too, that AFC Championship game, when you brought up Travis Kelce moving forward into the Super Bowl, sure, he's going to be a big player, but it was crazy that this is the guy we have to stop, and it was 11 for 11 on targets and catches for over 100 yards and getting into the end zone, which is crazy. But let's focus on the quarterback position here entering into the Super Bowl. Now, technically, they're not one-on-one going against each other, but the numbers are out here at the FanDuel Sportsbook. Patrick Mahomes, 262.5 for a passing prop. Brock Purdy, 245.5, and even the rushing yards here. Patrick Mahomes at 25.5 and Brock Purdy at 11.5 here. Are you eyeing one of these quarterbacks to play here on the prop stuff?
Yeah, Purdy will take off for more than 11 yards. Come on, that's a joke. Is that real? Are you guys reading that? You sure it's not a different number? Nah, that's not 71. It's right. Yeah, okay, that's insane. I mean, Purdy actually runs. Like, he's not afraid to take off and go. This is a pretty aggressive Chiefs defense. And although Lamar was unwilling to take off, there were plenty of opportunities for him to do it. Right? Like, that's a maniacally low number, if you ask me, for a guy that has enough mobility. And you saw him take off against the Lions. You saw him take off against the Packers. Like, this is a number here that looks pretty favorable, all things considered. I will say it's telling that they have, in the NFC Championship game, Brock Purdy had a higher yardage prop than Jared Goff did. Obviously, that's because the Lions' pass defense is bad. Now you flip it around, and you're giving Mahomes a more inflated number against a pass defense that's every bit as good as the Ravens. If Mahomes goes over this number, it's because the 49ers are up big, and he is throwing every single down to try and catch up. Like, that's the game script for him to get there. If they play a game script similar to the Ravens and this thing is under, why is Mahomes throwing for 260 yards? It's just, this is not an offense that is equipped for him to do that, only against specific opponents. And the 49ers defense is too good for him to give up that many passing yards if the 49ers are in control of the game and they have a lead.
Mahomes had exactly 262 in that frigid night in Arrowhead against the Dolphins in the opening round of the postseason. Well under that number now in 2 straight games. Did go over his passing yards prop for the AFC Championship with 241. It closed at 239 and a half. So, Zinno, let's correlate what we are seeing now in the Super Bowl numbers outright in Super Bowl 58 from a team perspective to the individuals. The story has carried over round by round for San Francisco, despite being the Super Bowl favorite, and now it's a pretty minimal edge over the only other team remaining. Brock Purdy, the quarterback for the Super Bowl favorites, was not the favorite to win Super Bowl MVP. That is Patrick Mahomes at plus 140. Purdy backed by 60 cents. 2-1, and Christian McCaffrey, third best number at plus 450. Travis Kelce yesterday was 21-1, $5 shaved off that price at 16-1. Zinno, as you play out your thought for who wins Super Bowl 58, then where do you think the best correlated bet is in the Super Bowl MVP odds?
Well, if the Chiefs win, it's got to be Kelce. Mahomes has not played a game worthy of note where you feel like he was the best player on the field. Like, we generally understand that he is, but the point simply is that if they win this game, it's because the Niners can't stop Travis Kelce. They're not going to have a problem stopping Isaiah Pacheco. You don't have to worry about any of the wide receivers doing anything unless something quirky out of the ordinary happens. Which of these wide receivers are you really worried about having a big game? So it's Mahomes or it's Kelce, and I would tend to think that if they win, it's Kelce. On the flip side, there's a lot of voters out there, and the MVP folks have told us this, that they don't even believe Brock Purdy is the best player on his team, let alone the best back in the NFL. So you look elsewhere. This may be the year, and I feel like I've said this the last couple of years, but this may be the year a non-quarterback actually wins the MVP in the Super Bowl. If the 49ers get it, you have to believe McCaffrey has been in the end zone twice, if not more than that, or Debo has done something pretty outstanding. But I don't know that you're going to see a game script develop against this pass defense where you look at it and go, Brock Purdy did something today that not many other quarterbacks could have done against that Chiefs defense. That doesn't feel like something I would say at the end of this Super Bowl.
You take a look at the positional numbers here at the FanDuel Sportsbook to win the MVP. Quarterback obviously is going to be the favorite at minus 280, but we brought up this point a couple times already as well, Mark. If you think this game is to the under, then you might be looking at running back, receiver, tight end, and or defense as a legitimate chance. Because if the game goes over into the 50s, there's probably a good chance that the quarterback threw for 275 plus and multiple touchdowns. Hard to knock him out. If you had to take a bet right now and just remove the quarterbacks from the situation, which grouping here, what position do you feel would be a decent wager here on there?
I mean, CMC obviously tilts the scales because he's such a dynamic player, but how can you deny Kelce and Kittle, two of the best in the game at the tight end position, as being the guys that might ultimately sway voters as the most valuable player on the field for the winning side in the Super Bowl? I think those two alone probably, when you look at 1-2, are the most even in position-wise, and two of the more pivotal guys to both of their teams' success offensively. So I would look to tight end.
If you think it is running back, I would just say take the plus 450 individually on Christian McCaffrey. Sure, Isaiah Pacheco could win Super Bowl 58 MVP if the Chiefs are victorious with another Lombardi trophy, but that doesn't seem like a better bet because you have Pacheco grouped in with McCaffrey. He is Mark Zinno, and as always, we appreciate his time. We're back here hearing from the public to end out hour 2 next.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now he's a little bit more over money, but he's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I
favorite.
don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I can tell you, like, Las Vegas is heavy San Francisco territory. All right, there are a ton of Niner fans, man, in Las Vegas and in Nevada, and specifically Reno. Reno's close, obviously, right? So, like, Reno's numbers will be a little bit different, but the total of 47.5. I get it.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
I kind of thought that Mike would maybe go in a different direction, or at least listen to some people with some different ideas.
If you were going to retain Mike Tomlin as coach, and I believe with both feet that you shouldn't let him really anywhere near this hire. That he had proved over the years that this was not an area of comfort or expertise for him.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the RAC. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like OKC just rolling into Detroit going, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Rounding out this second hour of the early line on this Wednesday on SportsGrid, I am Ben Stevens. He is Donnie right side, and this is the SportsGrid app, the ultimate sports betting companion app available for download at both the Apple and the Play Store. You can scan that QR code right there on your screen in a matter of minutes. All of our information and insight available in the palm of your hand. I am very excited for this poll where we ask the people out there about guys who have been sensational throughout regular season performances, putting up historical numbers, who have won MVPs in regular season action that leave a little or maybe even a lot to be desired once they reach the playoffs. In two different sports, though, it's Lamar Jackson in the National Football League, Joel Embiid in the NBA. We find out who has a better chance of winning a championship and who will do so sooner here in Fade the Public. At SportsGrid TV on Twitter, who will win a championship first? Joel Embiid, Lamar Jackson, or neither ever in their playing careers? In most of the public, nearly 52% of the public, Donnie, in this Fade the Public poll, saying neither Embiid nor Lamar Jackson will ever win anything of consequence. No championships for either JoJo or Lamar.
Yeah, it probably sounds right. And again, sometimes it's the narrative that you're based on. If you would have asked this poll question a week and a half ago, it might have gotten interesting because many of us thought maybe the Ravens could actually win one this year. And Joel Embiid is completely healthy and the Sixers are surging. Maybe they make a, component piece or two here at the trade deadline to help them out and they could win it. But the fact that Joel Embiid got hurt, we don't know when he's coming back. And Lamar Jackson, once again, dipped out of the playoffs earlier than expected. It's a fantastic poll at this point. Now, I did vote neither at 51.7%. But after the break, I'm going to let you know who actually is going to win a championship, one before the other one, because I think it's going to happen.
Oh, now I like that. I voted for one of the individuals specifically as well. We'll tell you when hour 3 starts in less than a minute.